What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Pilsners and Prelims UFC podcast. I'm Andy. That's Rick. Might have pointed to the wrong side, but we break down each and every fight of every card and provide our favorite picks, but as well as our favorite betting spots. So, hope you all had a great Thanksgiving. We missed you last week. It was sad to not have a UFC card, but I was able to make it down to Columbia, South Carolina for the Gamecocks and Clemson game, which in hindsight was not too much fun to watch from a neutral perspective or a Gamecock perspective. I mean, 16-7 finals, not great, but still had a good time. Family, friends was wonderful. And so hope you guys have been able to start getting on the Christmas shopping train because your expected value is getting less and less as every day passes. So they're going to start extorting you here soon. So I hope you do. But Andy, how was your Thanksgiving? And are you excited to see Patrick Mahomes in Lambeau on Sunday night?
Yeah, glad you had a happy Thanksgiving. Mine was good. Went home, saw some family, saw my brother, just hung out, had a lot to drink, had a lot to eat. So had a good Thanksgiving overall, I would say. But yeah, man, missing UFC for sure. I was like, yeah, it'll be a nice break to not have to break down a car, not have to watch UFC because I love the sport to death. But having one weekend off every now and again is sometimes a blessing in disguise. But me seeing that I missed it, I was like, oh my God, I cannot wait for this UFC Austin card. And here we are. I feel like you've done a ton of really technical tape study on this card. I feel like I've deep dove a lot of these fights twice over where I feel really comfortable with what we're talking about, what we're going to get into. And I can't wait to deep dive this with you and cram it into 5 minutes so we can get the people what they want, get them out of here, give them our bets, and ready to jump into it.
Yeah, man, it's a good card. It's a hell of a card. Like you said, I mean, I really went deep into tape study, but I just sort of got lost in some of these different matchups. Some interesting lines, but interesting matchups as well. So I'm excited to get into it. I know we've got Veronica Hardy and Jamie Lynn Horth first up, but before we get over to that, would love to just sort of put a nail in the coffin of the card from 2 weeks ago, the Brendan Allen and Paul Craig card, which lived up to expectations. I thought at least. I thought it was a pretty fun card. They hit a couple of underdogs. Lost a couple of underdogs as well. So I ended up going 2-4-2, with the two at the end there being the push with Trey Ogden fight being stopped too early, which really is a travesty. I mean, the UFC will end up doing him right because he was going to win that fight. He was up 2 rounds, was dominating the third round, was about to get the finish. And for whatever reason, man, he thought that arm went limp and he pulled it. But other good fighters on that card that really made an impression on me were Brendan Allen. I thought he was really impressive against Paul Craig, and we highlighted some of the different concerns that Paul Craig can give you. And then Amanda Ribas, I mean, shit, that spinning heel kick was fantastic. And Chase Hooper just dominating Jordan Levitt on the mat real quick to a fast submission. So some pretty emphatic wins for those guys. Some younger guys making their way up and really developing like Chase Hooper, but also Amanda Ribas reminding you that, hey, I'm still Amanda Ribas. I'm still a top 10, and you've got to get through me. So what were your thoughts?
Yeah, I feel like this year, like 2023 as a whole, has been such a big year for some of these young up-and-comers where there are a ton of times where when you're betting these fights, you have to kind of sit back and not look at how bad the vet has fared in their last couple fights and then look at and not necessarily try to discount as heavy how bad the young up-and-comer has done. And a lot of that kind of showed in that last card, in my opinion, where there was a lot of success for some of the youngins that are coming up. And I think that's really exciting for the UFC, especially with all the stuff going around with the Bellator and PFL stuff. There is going to be some pivotal moves made by the UFC in 2024 and 2025, where I feel like it's going to be so important for them to have this young up-and-coming talent because even though UFC didn't have a card, PFL had their card on Black Friday, and everyone was talking about it. There was a lot of talk and buzz about the World Championship fights that they had going on. And I mean, that was strategic and calculated by the PFL, like great business move by them, rightfully so. I mean, they only had a couple football games, and the NFL Black Friday game was already done by the time that their championship fights are going on. So I think the fact that a lot of the young up-and-comers are starting to blossom in the UFC will help be a strategic advantage for them against the PFL and Bellator stuff going on. But I think any competition that the UFC can get right now from a promotional standpoint is going to ultimately be beneficial for the promotion. Any competition will breed what is going to be a positive thing. So overall, that was kind of my main thing from that card turning into what was honestly, man, like a bigger PFL event than the card that we
It was
reviewed
good.
the week before.
Yeah, it was
So
quality too.
it was a lot of fun to watch. I had a blast watching it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, the PFL's made a statement here. I mean, they have made a statement with the acquisition of Bellator that they are going to compete with the UFC, and obviously Ngannou as well. I mean, and it's apparent. So, I mean, they're serious as far as a competitor for the best league in the sport. Like everyone knows right now that it's UFC, and then it was PFL, Bellator, One, sort of, and others. But it's going to be interesting to see how it develops. And you've already seen the UFC today. There's rumors that Michael Venom Page is coming over from Bellator. So that
I
would
think
be a
that's done.
huge get.
Yeah, I think that's a
Yeah,
done
that would
deal.
be a huge get for the UFC, and it'll be interesting to see if there's any fallout in contracts from the Bellator acquisition to see if the UFC is able to snatch up some guys, because we've seen some entertaining guys come from Bellator, and tons of guys. Most notably recently is Michael Chandler, who people were clamoring for a while, and I mean he's lived up to all the hype and more. So excited to have him over, and I think that it's a good thing for the sport what PFL's done. It pushes Dana White to really be able to pay his fighters. Because that's one thing in the PFL, you get that $1 million paycheck if you win that championship. In the UFC, you're not guaranteed that half of that, really. So fascinating enough. We could talk about that for hours, but we've got a fantastic card here in Houston. A couple main events, or a main event between Beneil Dariush, Arman Tsarukyan, as well as some different fights across that main card, including Kelvin Gastelum, Sean Brady, Rob Font, former champion Figueredo's on there. So just tons and tons of talent in a fight card that is somehow we're not paying for. So go figure. We've had worse ones that we've had to pay for. I will enjoy every bit of this one for free, as I do most of them anyways. But anyways, without further ado, we will head right into Veronica Hardy facing Jamie Lynn Horth in our first fight of the night.
Hey, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to Pilsners and Prelims, a UFC betting podcast by Happy Hour Sports. Just want to ask if you could like and subscribe to the video if you like the content that we're putting out, and be sure to stay tuned to what we have coming up in the future. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you on the other side.